Welcome to the grade 11 season finale of the Kelvin Dueck Physics Show Extravaganza. And here's your host, the Gretzky of Physics, the Usain Bolt of Acceleration. Here's Kelvin!
That was pretty good.
Yeah, it's gonna be the entire video.
Timed it there last year.
Let's learn.
We're also live, by the way.
Projectiles at angles. Okay? First of all, the two things that we learned last day are still going to be true. Horizontal acceleration is going to be 0. Vertical acceleration is going to be negative 9.8. So here's our first one. A projectile is launched from the ground at an angle of 36 degrees with a velocity of 89 meters per second. And much like last day, we want to dulp. So there's the ground. Here's my projectile. 36 degrees, eyeball it, is kind of about there. By the way, any of you catch the ISS Friday night during the fireworks? Right? It came right overhead. It was quite spectacular. Some of you didn't think of it to check. Okay. It's coming over this Sunday at 10 to 10, and it's not going to be at 87 degrees, which was almost right overhead, but I think it's going to be at 80 degrees, which is pretty close. So if it's clear this Sunday, 10 to 10, worth checking out. It's also coming over a few other times, but that should be a good pass, and that's not past your bedtime. And let's label velocity 89. Hey, is this a slanty velocity? Any suggestions? Well, components. We're going to break it into components that we would add tip to tail. I'm going to break this up into Vx and Vy. That's really, Kyle, the only difference. And you know what? I'm never going to use that 89 again. Once I find the components, that 89, as far as I'm concerned, I'm not going to plug it into any equation, and that's a temptation. Kids want to use the 89. No, I don't use a slanty because none of my equations work for slanties. They work for verticals and horizontals. So I wrote here part A, find the vertical and find the horizontal components of the velocity. Let's see. This is going to be adjacent, hypotenuse, opposite. You know what? I think Vx is going to be cosine. Oh, I forgot to put the angle in there. Yoink. 36 degrees. I should do that, shouldn't I? Cosine of 36 degrees equals Vx over 89. How would I get the Vx by itself? Vx is going to be 89 cos 36 degrees. And I think sine of 36 is going to be Vy over 89. Oh, and I forgot to say at the beginning of class, your tests are marked. I emailed out the scores. I hope to try and take a quick glance through them, but it might be come after school and look at your test for the next few days. Vy is going to be 89 sine 36. I should go to 2 sig figs because the 89 is 2 sig figs, but Margaret, I'm going to carry a few extra sig figs because I know I'm going to use this. So 89 cos 36 is 72 even. Oh, that's nice. That's my horizontal velocity when I leave the ground. And the vertical velocity is 89 sine 36, 52.31. And what I'm really saying then, Shaq, is moving at an angle of 36 degrees above the horizontal at 89 meters per second, that's exactly the same as moving sideways at 72 meters per second, while at the same time leaving the ground at 52.31 meters per second. But that 52.31 is going to change. In fact, you know what? All of us, let's put a little initial on the Vy, just to remind us that one's going to change because that one's accelerating. Not going to bother putting one on the Vx because there's no acceleration. Vx initial is Vx final is Vx middle, but Vy is going to change. In fact, there's going to come a point when my vertical velocity at the top is what? 0. Still going to be traveling sideways at 72, but my vertical velocity at the top will be 0, and then, Jake, I'll start to speed up going back down in the negative direction until I hit the ground again. Is that okay? Hey, Jake, what's B you want me to find? You know what? As I've said before, we're going to spend most of our time finding time. Okay? How? Well, again, we're going to go with our little t-table trick. And we're going to say, what else do I know? Oh, I know Vx. Sorry? I know Vy initial, not 0 like when we launched horizontally off of a cliff. What's Vy initial this time? How many pieces of information do I have on the left-hand side? 2. How many pieces of information do I have in the vertical column? 2. Not enough. What else do I know? What? What's the final velocity? Nope. At the top it's 0, but that's not the final velocity. You're very close though. I do know the final velocity. I know vertically how fast it's going to hit the ground at. Hit me, Kai. What you got?
-52.3.
Ah. Now, that only works because we're launching from the ground and we're ending up back at the same height. This is why launching from a cliff at an angle, I'm not going to test you on this year. If you launch from a cliff at an angle, you'd be at the same speed when you got level with the cliff, but then you'd speed up faster and faster and faster until you hit the ground. Vy final would be something different. I'd have to find it. Oh, but you know what? I'd know dy. I'd have one more piece of information. I could find Vy final. I do know the vertical displacement, by the way. How high are you when you started? How high are you when you finish? You moved sideways, I don't care. I could also have said, for what it's worth, I got lots of vertical information. Here is where I'm going to find time. Put your pencils down for 1 second. Okay. One thing I could do is this. I could use d equals VIT plus a half AT squared. I could say 0 equals 52.31 t minus 4.9 t squared. What kind of an equation is that? Begins with letter Q. How do I know? It's got a squared. And this is a yucky one, Jeff, because it's got a squared and it's got a linear term. I can't get the t by itself. However, this one you could solve. It's got a GCF. A GCF of what? It's so obvious it's tough to spot. What appears in both terms? T. You could actually factor this as t bracket 52.31 minus 4.9 t. And I know this year in your pre-calculus class, you solved equations like this. And you said, hey, find the roots. And you said, oh, one of the roots is 0, and the other root is change the sign, divide by. You've learned that trick. It works. But it's yucky decimals, Dane, and I'm going to say I won't freak out if that scares you. I don't need to use d equals VIT plus a half AT squared. I can, but because I know Vy final, pick your pencils up. I can ignore this distance being 0. I'll just hover the eraser around it. And I can say, I'm looking for an equation that has A, V initial, V final, and T. And that's one of the very first physics. In fact, that's the only physics equation you learned in Science 10, really. Which equation has VF, VI, A, and T in it? Atla. Get the T by, oh, you did get the T by itself. Sorry, my bad. Huh? T. Which we've been flogging for the last couple of days as well. So key idea, if you're launching at an angle from the ground and ending up on the ground, you know V initial and V final. Common mistake, by the way, kids say V initial is 89 and V final is negative 89 because they really want to use that nice even number. No, it's slanty. I'm never going to use it again. As far as I'm concerned, it's vanished. Time of flight. I'm going to do the rest of the work over here. T equals, what's V final? Negative 52.31 minus 52.31 divided by negative 9.8. How long is this projectile in the air for? Oh, conveniently, I have this number still on my calculator in my answer button. So I'm going to go negative answer, negative 52, minus answer, all over negative 9.8. You got a time of flight of 10.67609948. All right. You know what? I'll carry some extra sig figs. I'll go 10.68 seconds. Anthony, where else can I put that time? Oh. Anthony, what does part C want me to find? What's that? Oh, dx. Do I now have three pieces of information in the horizontal column? Well, then I can find dx. What was the equation that has A, V, T, and D in it? Oh, what's A, though, McKinley, in horizontal? So you know what? It was just this one, wasn't it? What happened to the half AT squared? Horizontally, we don't care. So it's going to be 72 times 10.68. I'll use my answer button again. In fact, if I really wanted to be bang on, Kyle, I could go like this. 89 cos 36 times answer button, because it wasn't exactly 72, it was 72.0025. But you know what? 72.00 is accurate to 4 sig figs. That's pretty good. Anyhow, 769. That's going to travel quite a ways, nearly a kilometer. Oh, yeah, we launched this pretty fast. 89 meters per second. That's hauling pretty good. Say what I say? 769. Meters. In other words, don't write this down, but the projectile looked something like this, and this distance here was 769 meters. What else might I like to know? I kind of wonder, how high did it get? I'm a nerd. I like to know these things. Oh, yeah, there, D. Find the maximum height. Height, vertical or horizontal? Okay, you guys are still on the same page. I've scrolled, so I'm going to quickly relist my data. I know that AY is negative 9.8. What was VY initial? 50 something, something, something? VY initial? 52.31. Now, you don't have to write those two, but the next one you will have to write. What's VY final? Careful. 0, because we're at the top now. So write down VY final equals 0. What are they asking me to find? D. I'm looking for an equation that has A, VI, VF, and D in it. Hey, what great review. I almost wish we did have a final exam this year. Oh, the squared one, VF squared equals VI squared plus 2A. You get the D by itself. I'll give you a hint. D equals? And the only thing I'm going to quickly do is remind myself, make sure that's vertical, make sure that's vertical, make sure that's vertical. Again, kids want to stick in the 89. Could you use this one to find a horizontal distance? What's your horizontal acceleration? 0. So what would you have in the denominator? 0. Can you divide by 0? This one won't help you find a horizontal range. Sorry. 0 squared minus 52.31 squared all over 2 and a negative 9.8. You got 139.6? Someone double check me? Yep. Yeah? I'll write 139.6 and then I'll go really 140. meters. What time is it at the top? I didn't ask that, but what time is it when it's at the top? Half of our total time. So take that total time, the 5 point, what did I say? Total time was 10.68, divide it by 2. That's when it's at the top. Only again because you're launching and ending at the same height. Cliff from an angle, tougher. Cliff horizontally easier because Vy initial is 0, which lets you use t equals the square root of 2d over a. Let's use d equals Vi t plus half at squared to find your t. So let's put it all together. Example 2, instead of walking through every step, find the range for projectile launched from the ground at an angle of 57 degrees with a velocity of 321 meters per second. This sucker's going to go. I suspect this is going to have a range of 3 or 4 kilometers, just maybe more. Start me out. Dulp, good call. By the way, make your diagrams a little bit big. In other words, don't do this. It's much nicer when you're breaking this into components if you have a big enough triangle that you can work with. And 57 degrees, you know what? Probably I should even be a little steeper because that looks closer to 45. 57 degrees is probably a little closer to that, give or take. 57 degrees, 3, 2, 1. Now what? Are we at an angle? Well, then what do we do with an angle? Components. Oh, hopefully I taught that last in the vectors unit. Good, 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 good. So Vx, Vy. Opposite, hypotenuse, adjacent. I guess it's going to be cosine of 57 equals Vx over 321. I think Vx is going to be 321 cos 57. Hey, which trig function do you think is going to be Vy? As a shortcut in the interests of time, can I go Vy initial equals 321 sine 57? You know what? I'm not even going to evaluate that. I'm just going to drop those down because it didn't actually ask me to find them. I know, Trev, I'm going to use this to find the other ones. Oh, okay. Now what? How? Maybe this? Our little t-table, horizontal, vertical. What can I write right away? Is he awake? Thank you. It's a team effort. AX is 0. AY is negative 9.8. VX is 321 cos 57. Whatever the heck that is, I don't care. I'll just write that. I'm sure it's some lovely decimal, but Darian, I'm not even going to waste my time until I have to use it. Oh, and VY initial is 321 sine 57. Ah! Nothing? Awake? Last one of those, maybe? What else do I know? Oh, Vy final. What's Vy final? Negative 321 sine 57. Which means I can find time. I can find time. There's my, I know 3, I can find the 4th. Looking for an equation that has VI, VF, A, and T in it. T equals VF minus VI over A. Just make sure I'm putting verticals in all of these. It's going to be, okay, you know what? Now I'm going to go, oh, heck. Bracket, negative 321 sine 57 minus 321 sine 57 divided by negative 9.8. I think that's right. Did I miss a bracket? I missed a bracket. Mr. Dueck, you need a close bracket there divided by negative 9.8. Let me see. 1, 2, open brackets, close bracket, open bracket, close, and there's my, yeah, that works. You get 54.94. It's in the air for almost a full minute.
Yeah.
Oh. Meters per second, Mr. Dueck? How about seconds? Sheesh. How about get the units right? If you had a teacher who was any good, he would have told you it was worth memorizing units. Now what? Range, horizontal or vertical? Oh, dx? How can I calculate dx? It's vxt plus a half axt squared. I'm writing it out just to remind you we're crossing that out. This is by far, Rob, the most common mistake. Kids want to put the negative 9.8 there. Because they just, well, it must be accelerate, it's d equals vx plus a half at squared. Yeah, it is, but a is 0. This horizontally, a is 0. We're ignoring air resistance. And even with air resistance, if you're firing a cannon with lots of mass and nice and round, so it's pretty aerodynamic, it's going to be Vx 321 cos 57 times 54.94. It's going to be 321 cos 57 times answer button. So that's if you, Emma, really want to be fussy and accurate. Don't evaluate anything. Just write down what they are in terms of sine and cosine and type them in when you need them. Or you could have evaluated them like we did in the previous one to 4 or 5 sig figs. I have no problem which one you choose. Wow, 9 kilometers, nearly 10 kilometers. 9.6 times 10 to the third meters. 9.6 kilometers. Yeah, it's, well, that's from about the Pitt Bridge. That would clear Garibaldi. Example 3. Projectile is launched horizontally from a cliff. Okay? We're just going to start this one. We're not going to finish this. First of all, Dane, what does part A want me to find? Okay, we would dulp. We would say, okay, horizontally, I would underline the word horizontally, 85 meters per second. 68 meters. This is to refresh your memory and also from a couple of kids who were away last class. We would still break this up into horizontal and vertical. We would still go AX is 0, AY is negative 9.8. What else do I know? I know VX and I know VY initial. What's VX? Don't need to do any trig here. It's horizontal. What's Vx? 85. And this is what you have to remember. When you're launched off a cliff, what's your initial vertical velocity for a split second? 0. That's still not enough. I know one more thing. What? Displacement. Negative. Okay, and now you can solve for t. And now that once you know t, you can find the range. I'm not going to do that one again. We did that last class. Okay? And then part B, we also did a question where I said, find the impact velocity. That was adding the two vectors together. But I did that last class. Physics 12, is this it? I think. Yep, okay. I want to try and give you lots of time to work on this because everything, moving around. Politics. Physics 12. Launched from a cliff at an angle. The good news is you already know how to start this. Take a guess on how you start this. Same way we started every other projectile question. Dope? Yeah. At an angle. Yoink. How fast? 51. What angle? 32 degrees. What height? 63 meters. Now what? Here's your hint. At an angle. Why did I put an initial on the Vy but not on the Vx? Okay, Vx horizontal acceleration is 0, so Vy is Vy is going to change. Opposite, hypotenuse, adjacent. Oh, I think Vy is going to be sine again. Vx is going to be cos again. So cos 32 equals Vx over 51. Sine 32 equals Vy initial over 51. Ax is 0. Ay is negative 9.8. Vx is 51 cos 32. Vy initial is 51 sine 32. Some of you are going, I don't like that. Fine. 51 cos, yep. 51 cos 32 is 43.25. And 51 sine 32 is 27.03. So if you want the numbers, great. Kyle, if you want the algebra one, great. They're about the same amount of typing if I go to 4 sig figs, no matter what. And so I choose to usually use the more accurate one, which is keeping the trig function in the question. Anyways, that's not enough. Got 2 things in each column. What else do I know? dy? What's dy? It's not 63. Sorry? I know Vy final. What's Vy final? Nope. It would be that, don't write this down, right there, but it's going to keep going till it hits the ground. So, you know what? In fact, I can tell you that Vy initial is going to be less than negative 27.03. It's going to be like negative 30 or negative 40 or a negative number further from 0 than negative 27. Wait a minute. Otla, though, I think you're on the right track. Can't I say this? Now, what am I spending most of my time trying to find? No pun intended. So over here, let's write down t equals question mark, and then put your pencil down. One way to solve this would be to say, I'm looking for an equation that has d, vi, a, and t in it, which would be which would then become negative 63 equals 27.03 t minus 4.9 t squared. What kind of an equation is that? How do I know? It's got a squared. How do I, and you could solve it with the quadratic formula, plus the 63 over, make it equal to 0. And I showed some of you last day where your quadratic solver was. Did I show you how to use the quadratic solvers last day? I just told you who had quadratic solvers. Did I walk you through how to use them? No? Kind of? Okay, I'll do that later on in class. It works. It's a lot of work, and especially by hand. Then you're pulling out x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So you know what? I'm not gonna. Here's what I'm gonna say. Pick your pencils up. I can find Vy final. There is an equation that has these four things in it. Which one?
The square equation, Vf squared equals Vx squared plus 280.
Where that's vertical, that's vertical, that's vertical, that's vertical. Again, make sure you don't put a horizontal into a vertical equation. Make sure you don't put a vertical into a horizontal equation. Almost a plug and chug, I guess, to get rid of, you know what? I'll come on, pen. Oh, there, now it suddenly started working. Square root. Uh, 27.03 squared plus 2, negative 9.8, negative 63. Come on, pen. This number squared plus 2 times negative 9.8 times the negative right there, Mr. Dueck. Negative 63 square root. And 44.33 is wrong. This is the only issue. This equation, it's a nice equation. It's very useful, but it returns scalar answers when you square root. So we have to add the negative. Having done that, now I can say time, which is what this wanted me to find, is Vf minus Vi over A, vertical, vertical, vertical. Negative 44.33 minus 27.03 all over negative 9.8. Negative answer button. And if I really wanted to be accurate, instead of typing 27.03, I could go minus 51 sine 32 divided by negative 9.8. And that'll be accurate to like however many sig figs I need. Or you could use the 27.03, just fine as well. Gonna make it, Joanne? I don't know. Do you get 7.28?
Yep.
Okay. Continue on. Could I find the range? Sure. Dx equals Vxt blah, 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 blah. Could I find the maximum height? Sure. At the top, what's Vy? 0. What was Vy initial? Whatever it was, 27 point whatever. A is negative 9.8. I could find how high that is, and then I'd have to add the height of the cliff. We've done that before. Homework, you can try Number one, you're on the moon, so don't use negative 9.8. G is 1.6 negative. Add the negative yourself. Negative 1.6 meters per second squared. Two is good. 3 is good, so here's at an angle, 48 meters per second at an angle of 50 degrees. Did the answers appear on yours, by the way, in brackets or not?
Yes.
Okay, I had trouble with I borrowed this from another teacher, and it was hidden characters, and sometimes they would print and sometimes they wouldn't. Nah. 6A, B, and C, but not D. Seven is good. The remainder of this sheet is tougher than I will put on the test. Try them. Let me see here. You know what? I'm going to pass on that, and instead what I'm going to give you are the 3 practice take-home quizzes as well. I might give you less than all